facing is the increased digital presence that we've had to maintain since the library has, the physical building has closed. We've continued services. We've ramped up the number of ebooks and digital audiobooks we've been purchasing. We subscribed to Zoom as well, so we could perform, so librarians could continue to do their programs, story times and book clubs and other things like that. We've had to purchase new services such as Hoopla, which is another ebook, digital audiobook, and even movie borrowing streaming service that we've begun to subscribe to. So we've seen an increase on the costs that the library has incurred due to COVID-19. Also, as we plan for the future, this first phase, we've been investigating a curbside delivery that I call parkside delivery. We're going to be utilizing a window that faces the gazebo in Kennelly Park, where we will have individuals call us and patrons call us, place items on order, and we will schedule a time for them to come in and come to the parkside window and pick up those items. As we progress through each phase, we're going to look at offering more services. And as we offer those services, we're going to have to look at providing safeguards for the staff and the community. For one of the things we currently have on order is sneeze guards. It's on back order because everybody is purchasing those sneeze guards, but that is part of what we will be using as we move forward and we begin to expand the services we offer to the community. State-mandated retirement contributions is always an ongoing challenge, but with the economy, the amount we contribute towards retirement will inevitably increase. Once the library is able to fully open up to the community, we believe we'll be seeing an increased need for library services. There's a trend in libraries that as the economy improves, as unemployment decreases, library usage also decreases. So we imagine with the increased unemployment happening to our nation, we will see an increased need, increased demand for the services we provide. The state reductions in library aid doesn't necessarily impact the Fairport Public Library as much as the Monroe County Library System. The governor, before COVID even hit, as he does every year, proposed a 5% decrease to library aid. After COVID hit, our legislators worked hard, and they were able to put 2.5% back in. So it was only a 2.5% decrease. But with the governor's ability to do mid-year cuts, I don't know where that will be. And those cuts will negatively impact the Monroe County Library System. So we could potentially see cost share increases if those cuts are massive, and they could potentially cut services. The number of deliveries we have per week could decrease, which would mean lag time between when we are able to get materials in for people who place holds. And there are other services that they may decide to cut that in turn the Fairport Public Library will potentially want to continue. And with every year we see healthcare costs increase. Each year the increase in minimum wage, technology costs to keep our technology up to date, especially as they become more and more obsolete. And then changes in the Fairport parenting community. We're currently on about year four of our long-range plan, and we incorporate changes to that plan that reflected the changes in the population of our community. Our aging community. We looked at adding more adult programming. However, we are not decreasing any of our children's programming as the demand continues to be very strong. Next slide, please. So you can see in the proposed budget, this is our overall budget, our expenditures. You can see that the salaries are about 51% of that budget. We're a service organization, so salaries tend to be the vast majority of what we spend. And then you can see down the list that I'm not going to read this off, but you can see benefits, then library materials, occupancy costs, which is our rent, utilities, and then the Monroe County Library System, as I mentioned. Our cost shares are currently at about 2% of our overall budget. Next slide. And this just shows you historical, our budget over the years, the last decade. This is about over that decade, we've seen about a 1.55% increase on average from year to year. Some years are bigger than others, and some years you can see there was a negative balance in 2011, 2012. Next slide, please. And this is just a comparison of the professional salary costs from the current budget year to the next year's proposed budget. Professional line is our librarians and the library director and assistant library directors. Next line is clerical. They're the ones who check out books at the front desk, process all the new materials as they come in. Pages are the individuals who sometimes help with checkout at the desk, and then reshelving materials as they are returned. And then we have custodials and our library aides as well, and fringers. Next slide, please. And then this slide is just a breakdown of the benefits. We've kept New York State Retirement flat. Our actual budget and what our projections for this current year is, we will be under that 170,000. So we decided just to be safe, keep it flat, and we'll see where that goes with the economy. Health insurance, our actual from the previous year and our projections were lower than 345. So when we devised this budget, we lowered that to 330. And you can see FICA, we're increasing a little bit. And then we have our other benefits as well, looking at actual versus the projected for the current year. And we decided to lower that a bit as well. Next slide, please. So these are our non-tax revenue sources, fees, fines, and printing. We decided to keep that at 43,000. We were trending over what we budgeted previous year. It's uncertain how COVID-19 will impact this. I imagine the amount of overdue fees, especially since we've extended overdue limits, will be down, but we will be monitoring that over the course of the year. For pilot, we went with 10,000 since we received less pilot funding in the 19-20 actual budget. So we decided as such to decrease the amount we would be expecting from pilot. State aid, the 10,000 didn't nearly encapsulate all that we received from state aid last year. It was a little bit over, I think, 12,000 if I remember correctly. But because of the issues with the cuts, we decided to drop that down to 11 rather than to go for the full 12,000. Interest income, that's pretty much what's been year to year. Started to explore ways to increase the interest earned on income, but with COVID hitting, that's been on the back burner, and I'd like to explore it over the course of the year, but I don't think anything will be in place before the end of the full budget cycle for next year. And then we have the amount of money we will be appropriating from our fund balance. Next slide, please. So this here is the tax cap calculation for the library. It's a complicated formula, but the bottom line is that the library is requesting a tax increase of $51,861. The amount of the increased allowed tax cap is just about $106,204. So we're within the allowable amount, precisely almost half of what the allowable amount is, according to the tax cap. Bottom line is that for a home assessed at $20,000, this is an increase of about $3 a year, or about 25 cents a month. Next slide, please. And this slide is the fund balance that I spoke of earlier. You can see that the first line is capital funds, and that's set aside for future facility improvements. We also, some of our staff is nearing retirement, so we have funds set aside for employee separations as employees retire. That was much larger last year, and we've had a few retirements in the interim. So, and I imagine this coming year, we're going to have some more retirements, and the amount that we need to set aside for employee separations will decrease. Library enrichment, complicated, or it's a very confusing title, but it's actually very easy. It's donations and memorials that individuals donate to the library. Those funds have been donated over the years, and they're earmarked for specific projects, art installations. The mice that you see out in Kennelly Park was something that came from monies donated, and we allocated in library enrichment. Technology improvements, I mentioned that in the budget presentation under ongoing challenges, repairs and replacement. Our cash flow is what we keep in our budget that we set aside to cover the beginning of the fiscal year until taxes are collected and received. The last one is the board decided that to spend down some of the fund balance, and that is our budget appropriation for the fiscal year. Next slide, please. So this gets into how well the library is used. And you can see that total circulation over the last couple of years has decreased. There could be a number of factors in play. If you look at 2017, that was just after the renovation. That was a full year after the renovation. And in general, in the library world, you tend to see when a new library is built, the renovation is done, it's nice, new, shiny, people flock to it. As other libraries are built, the new Roundyport Library, new Henrietta Library, people begin to want to see those nice, new, shiny things. So I think that's in line with where that decrease is occurring. Also, too, as I mentioned, with the economy being as excellent as it has been over the last 4 or 5 years, you will tend to see a decrease in library usage. However, when you look at the circulation of digital materials, that would be our ebooks, digital audiobooks, those things, there's been a large increase in usage there. And I imagine with COVID, we've been focusing a lot of our energy on that. A lot of our patrons are using that. I imagine when I do this presentation next year, we'll see another large jump in circulation of digital materials. Next slide. So this is the number of library visits for 2019. You can see we had about 284,000 visits to the library. We were open for 328 days in 2019. So that's an average of 866 individuals using the library in 2019 per day. That's phenomenal. I always say, as a new director, I always say that the library is the heart of the community, and you can really see how healthy the community is by how much they value the library. 866 days, or 866 as a door count per open day is phenomenal. Next slide, please. So here we have circulation. This is the number of items checked out: books, DVDs, CDs in 2019. We are the most used library in the Monroe County Library System. Our circulation statistics, even though we're not the largest, we are the single library, not including the branches in RPL, of a single library building. We have the largest circulation of any library in Monroe County. We had 628,000 items checked out in 2019 or renewed. That amounts for 1,722 a day, which is a phenomenal number, just like visits. A lot of materials, a lot of books, a lot of DVDs, CDs going in and out of that library each day. I can attest to it. While we were closed, I would go into the library every day and empty out the book drops. And we had a lot coming in. By the end, this week, as staff have started to return to the library to prepare for our Parkside delivery, by the end of last week, we had returned and reshelved somewhere around 29 full book cards. of books. So it's been a massive undertaking to get all that stuff returned, and it's incredible. Next slide, please. And this is the last slide, and this just shows you the programming. A lot of what we do is programming as well. Program that we offer the community. Early literacy programming is our story times, and you can see that's the majority of what our programming is. And we've had 22,361 parents, children visiting the library each week for story times. And then beyond that, we have other programming for children. Another 9,767 children and parents came to those. And then below that, you can see our programming for teens. A lot of that is SAT practice, babysitter training, chess. For programs for adults, we have our AARP program, Safe Driver program. We have the book discussion, travel logs, various educational historical programming, technology tutoring, all of that within the adult program, another 4,735 individuals attended to that, for a grand total of 38,760 coming to programs in 2019. So, as I said, everybody here should be proud. You have a beautiful library, very well used. As a new resident of Fairport, I'm very happy with the library we have here. And that'll be it. Thank you.
I was hearing everything fine. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he's fine.
Yeah, no problem.
To help offset any type of decrease in our budget that might occur from economic shortfalls. This budget entails, or this presentation entails, a three-part budget of our expenditures and our revenues and voter propositions. The expenditures piece will review programming, the administrative component, and our capital component of our expenditures. You'll see that there has been steady declining enrollment. And again, this declining enrollment has helped with our cost containment, particularly in the grades of 6 through 12. You'll see that you'll have class sizes around 440, and we had a current graduating class of 480. So when you have that kind of declining enrollment, natural efficiencies can occur. We have many FTEs, or full-time equivalents, that have been decreased, and we'll be speaking about that in a moment. But again, the real impact of that was lessened. Class sizes, K-5 are still at 15 to 20 in K-1 and 2. Grades 3, 4, and 5 remain 21 through 24. Yeah, can we just do me a favor? Yeah, I'm just having some trouble with some feedback. That's why I'm sort of stammering through this. I apologize. You'll see at Brooks Hill, there is a net reduction of -2. At Dudley, there's a net reduction of staffing of -3. Northside, because of increases in enrollment, there were +2 staff members that were impacted. Jefferson Avenue, -1 as a result of the class size adjustments. Secondary, grades 6 through 12, the average class size was 24 to 26. There are anomalies that are always taken into consideration when you're building a budget. Sometimes class sizes need to go a little bit lower because of art and technology class sizes, safety and space limitations. We're still able to maintain those expectations in this budget. Overall, summary of major staffing changes, and anytime you impact FTE. We're taking people out of the mix, and that impacts us as a school district. There'll be a reduction of 15.5 full-time equivalents, individuals who won't have the opportunity to connect with our students. We are not filling 12 and a half of those positions, and as a result, the net reduction total will be 3.0 full-time equivalents. You'll see them broken down here on the left, an estimated net reduction of 2.0 at the elementary after attrition, an estimated net reduction of 1.0 at the district office to, from a district level central administration position. Again, 3.0 FTE will be impacted by the total reductions. As we move through the budget, the employee benefits are in each one of our categories. You'll see that the employee contribution rate is an average contribution rate of 14.6% for our ERS. In our teacher retirement system, or our TRS, is going to be at 8.86 to 9.53% of an increase. And that's based upon a percentage of staff salaries. It's a contribution as a percentage of their salary. And again, these budget lines will be in each one of the categories that I'm about to review. Other benefits that are associated are health and dental, our FICA, med, and our life and unemployment and flex accounts, et cetera. So again, this will be highlighted as we move through our program budget. The program budget is everything curriculum and instruction. You'll see that there is a 2.25% total increase in this budget line. And you'll recognize that there's some line items as a result of some adjustments of the actual budget on how we pay for staff development and a 12.4% increase. Special programming, again, that's our special ed costs. Summer school, there are some salary adjustments in those line items as well. The administrative budget, you'll see a 2.72% increase in this line item. Been communicated multiple different times throughout our budget process. Again, this is the cost associated with administering the district. You'll see the minus 1.29% decrease in the instructional administrative support. That's where that reduction is coming from, as I spoke about earlier. Our capital budget has to do with costs associated with operating and maintaining our school facilities. We're trading in buses. We have a total of 13 buses we're trading in, but we're only going to be bringing back 11 buses as a means to offset some expenditures there. You'll see transfer to debt service fund at 8.8% increase. That's again helping maintain or pay debt that has come on through past previous projects. And you'll see a benefit, employee benefits of 5.7% in this line item, for a total of 1.8% of the total budget. Total expenditures, program, administrative, and capital combined is a 2.24% increase. And when we started this, and we thought we were at a point where we can move forward in the budget process, we were at a 3% or around 3%, and we had to whittle that down to help meet the needs of this particular budget. Mr. Stevens is now going to talk a little bit about how we're going to pay for all these expenditures. I've got it. Good.
Thank you, Mr. Provenzano, and good evening. The next piece of the budget we'll talk about are the revenues, and here you see a summary overall in a pie graph format of the different revenues the district has. And you can see basically the two large pieces of revenue for the district include our property tax and pilots, as well as our state aid revenue. Also within our revenue is sales tax. The district receives sales tax from Monroe County. Some Medicaid funds, assigned fund balance, and general fund reserves, as well as a transfer from my debt service fund. You also see other revenue, approximately 0.9%. That's related to any BOCES refunds or refund of prior year expenses, admissions, facility use fees, etc. So, again, you see it's overall approximately 90% of the revenue side of the budget is related to state aid and property taxes. Here's a summary of the state aid the district receives, and the largest piece of state aid that the district receives is foundation aid for operating aid. This is the basic operating aid for the district. Here you can see just a small formula-based increase of $232, but overall the actual revenue cash stayed flat from 1920 to proposed 2020-21. Thank you. The foundation aid is the piece, overall that we're unsure in terms of potential mid-year state aid cuts in 2020-21 based on the look-back periods that Governor Cuomo has proposed throughout the budget. So that's a piece we'll be watching closely related to our operating aid for next year. The next two pieces are new for 2020-21 and built within the budget. The state placed a pandemic adjustment, essentially a cut to the foundation aid of $621,000, offset by federal CARES restoration. So some federal monies to offset the pandemic adjustment that the state is imposing on school districts, and that is Fairport's portion. The transportation, BOCES, and building aid, those are expense-based aids and primarily projected to increase due to our building aid. We'll be receiving some new building aid on past projects. So overall, you see a slight increase there, as well as a small increase for transportation aid related to some of the increased contract transportation services that we have had. Also keeping an eye on that because due to COVID during 2019-20, there may be a decrease in some aids for transportation for next year based on some expenses we didn't incur in 2019-20, but utilizing any of those monies to help offset that shortage in 2021. Our excess cost aid, that's aid that the district receives for students with special needs, for private placements outside the district, as well as the students educated at BOCES and within the district. So you can see a fairly steady amount there, about an increase of $32,000. And then the next piece is our aidable materials, which is our aid on textbooks, library software, hardware and software, as well as our urban, suburban, and tuition aid, and projected to remain a slight decrease, but fairly steady compared to 2019-20. For a total increase in state aid of $772,000, again, primarily related to the increase in expense-based aids. The next piece we'll talk about is the property taxes, and just the slide just talks about what the property tax is. It's been in it for several years, but basically the cap of 2% is not necessarily 2%. It could be more or less than 2% depending on the exclusions available within the formula. So the next slide will show the formula, and here's the calculation for Fairport for 2020-21. You can see with the town of Perrington's tax-based growth factor, as well as the pilots and exemptions. The allowable levy growth factor is that 2% number calculation. So either that number will be 2% or CPI, the growth in the consumer price index, whichever is less. So for 2020-21, the number there is not 2%, it's 1.81%. Overall, with the capital exclusions of $1.1 million, the district has an allowable levy of 2.13% increase, or $79.5 million. Here's the combination of all of the revenues as a whole. Again, you can see the property tax levy, which is at the property tax cap. It is within the cap of 1.6 million in revenues that generates. Our pilots, a slight increase in some of the pilots coming on for the district with the County of Monroe as well as the Village of Fairport. Sales tax is a piece based on the economy, based on COVID, where we are projecting a loss in revenue for 2020-21. And here you can see it's a budgetary decrease of a little over $700,000. The district has realized revenue gains overall in sales tax, so the overall impact could range anywhere from $1 million to $1.4 million in a loss of sales tax for 2020-21. State aid, our federal Medicaid, and then the assigned fund balance. This is money left over from the 2019-20 school year that the district's looking to allocate to 2021 as a revenue source to help manage the tax increase as a whole. So here you can see the district has allocated an additional $323,000 of assigned fund balance, and coupled with the assigned reserves on the second to last line, you can see that our commitment to assign more money from our reserves or our savings to help mitigate tax increase for 2020-21 is up $1 million there. So overall, between the assigned fund balance and the reserves, it's a $1.3 million increase in utilizing the district savings. The transfer from debt service fund, that's simply monies from debt service fund that can be used to pay for the local share of debt. So that's another piece that the district allocates money to help mitigate the tax increase. And the $104,000 decrease is simply related to premium that was received on a short-term borrowing in 2018-19 that's going to pay off interest for 2019-20 for the interest payment coming due. So that premium itself for short-term borrowing isn't there for 2020-21. So overall, total revenue between the reserves, taxes, state aid, and so forth is a $2.9 million increase, which equals the budgetary increase on the expense side, or 2.24%. So the next piece just provides a little breakdown of what reserves the district is allocating funds from. So as mentioned before, on the last slide, we have the assigned fund balance, which is money left over from 2019-20. And then going down through the operating reserves, the reserves we'll be able to allocate money from for operating expenses, or the tax tertiary reserve, which is to pay for tax refunds that take place during the school year. Unemployment reserve, which helps pay unemployment expenses that the district incurs. And then the retirement contribution reserve, and this is broken out into the employee retirement system and the recently allowed teacher retirement system subfund of the reserve. So overall, the district will be allocating the money from those two reserves of $2.2 million. So as a whole, the district's increasing from $5.7 million up to $6.9 million of utilizing our reserves and fund balance as a commitment to help mitigate the tax increase on the revenue side. So the next slide, I'd just like to show this that shows how did we get to the reserve usage in some aspects. So we start with a total budget of $135 million. That's the expense side. Our revenues, actual revenues, is $128 million. And then the next two pieces are the reserve money. So you can see in order to bring the reserves and fund balance up plus the revenue to the total budget, those two pieces are added in. So the $400,000 and the $6.5 million to come to the $135 million budget piece. As a whole, historically we've been decreasing due to natural increases in the budget and trying to remain stable with the reserve usage, decreasing reliance. There's a commitment in 2021 to increase the usage due to the state of the economy and balancing the revenue side of the budget. So you see a percent of budget increase of the reserves to 4.85%. And the next piece that will be seen on the ballot for voters is a request to utilize money from our capital technology reserve. This is one of the reserves that's restricted solely to what it was set up and approved for by voters. There's money in our capital technology reserve that the district is proposing to utilize $309,000 from such reserve to help support some of the technology needs in 2020-21. In 2019-20, the district utilized $464,000, which was approved by voters. So here we're lowering our reliance on the reserve down to $309,000 And these monies are utilized to make a purchase through BOCES, which in turn drives BOCES aid for 2021-22 school year. The next piece just talks about the different mailings that are occurring. A little bit different this year due to the revised budget date. The first mailing, which residents would have seen, was a postcard that had the information for the budget vote and board elections. The second mailing, still to be processed, is the absentee ballots. Due to the vote taking place June 9th by absentee ballot only, the district is required by the state to mail out absentee ballots to residents of the district. So you can see there will be many pieces included within the envelope. There will be one envelope mailed. Within the outer envelope that to be mailed will be 2 ballots that go with 2 absentee ballot envelopes. So when the ballot is completed, each ballot will be placed in their own absentee ballot envelope. There's a third envelope within the outer envelope that is the required by the state for the district to provide a postage paid return envelope back to the district. So the 2 absentee ballot envelopes may be placed in the one business reply envelope to be mailed back to the district. There's also a drop box available at district office for folks to drop off their ballots as they must be received by the district by 5 p.m. on June 9th in order to count for the vote. Any resident requiring additional ballots may contact our deputy district clerk. You can see her name on the screen, Taylor Buffa, with her email address as well. And then the third mailing to go out, or what has gone out, is our commentator. So folks would have seen the commentator in mailboxes with our budget information as well. Thank you.
All this preparing us for the June 9th budget vote. There'll be the budget vote and Board of Elections. Again, this will be via absentee ballot only. Again, absentee ballots are being mailed to your household. You'll have 2 per household. If you need an additional set of ballots, 1 or more, if you have qualified voters in your household, please contact our district Board of Education clerk, Taylor Buffa. Her email is on the screen as presented. Absentee ballots must be received by 5 p.m. on June 9th. Again, there will be a secure lockbox at district office if you choose to drop your ballot directly to district office. Again, there will be 3 candidates on the absentee ballot for Board of Education. 3 candidates vying for 3 uncontested seats will be Joyce Kostick, Marty Cardona, Erica Fellows Pacer. Will all be running for those 3 seats. That's all we have for our budget. Thank you very much, Mr. Stevens. Thank you to your team as well. Thank you to our Board of Education, again, for your clarity and support through this process.
Thank you, Mr. Provenzano, Mr. Stevens, everybody, appreciate it. Somebody's put in the comments, right, if there are comments on Facebook. So again, if there needs to be anything addressed, we will look at that and publish as appropriate. Since we are 28 minutes behind in terms of our start time for our regular board meeting, I move we go right into that and need a motion indeed to, well, I'll call to order our public meeting at 6:58 p.m. and seek a motion for approval of the agenda. Judy, I see your hand raised, but
Judy.
Yep. Judy.
Yep.
Second.
Damon.
Damon, second, Damon, thank you. Is there any amendments proposed to the agenda as we see it right now? Hearing none,
Yep.
for a vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the vote was 7-0. I understand we normally could have options for public comment. I assume at this point we haven't had any. We had none submitted just prior, so moving forward with our agenda then, time for the president's report. I think I said enough probably at the public hearing overall. Just recognize and kudos indeed to our staff again nobody has rolled over, nobody has surrendered. They have accepted the challenge that's been presented to everybody, unanticipated and perhaps even unwelcomed as it has been. But they have not just laid down and let it walk all over them or our students or the staff, so thank you so much for that. I think our unsung heroes sometimes are many of the people in this room, our IT staff, so thank you for constant support. I can't imagine the increased need that has happened in terms of the machinery that's needed as well as the technological capability, the bandwidth, and everything to work appropriately, so thank you for that. We recognize there's still a lot of planning, right, for us, and the board will continue to oversee that and ask questions about what's going on. We know that certain organizations are putting out guidelines of what it might be to reopen, that different scenarios have to be looked at, different planning teams have been created, so we look forward to getting those, I'm not sure if the reports back, but status and where that planning goes as we move forward, but again, I think there's enough unknowns to want to say you can finalize anything, right, for the next year. But thank you, everybody, and thanks for just the continued hard work. Brett, we'll give time to you for the president's report. Superintendent's report.
Sounds good. Thank you. As I cue this up here. Just would like to first start out by saying, highlight some very important bright spots. Our food service and our transportation department continues to serve our community, our students in need. To date, again, I've shared that we're probably over 40,000 students we've been able to support through our food service program. Our transportation department and members of our food service continually show up each day, and so much gratitude goes out to them. And we will be continuing this meal program as we move through the summer via the governor's executive order, so please stay tuned. Again, much appreciation. The next piece to this, it's worth talking about, is the social emotional needs of our students is the priority. We continually talk about building resilience, making connections with students. Our coaches are doing it, our teachers are doing it, our food service department is doing it. We are putting forth a program for parents this Friday. We'll continue to put this on our social media. It's about wellness tips, practical wellness tips for our families. We understand that this will be a priority. Moving forward, we know that our students have lost their routine. They've lost their consistent approach to just doing the things that they've always have been doing, and we know that that makes an impact in their lives. We're constantly talking about stress management, trying to make sure that our staff will be well equipped to support our families in need, our students in need. We also are working with our administrative team and teachers, trying to understand who do we need to get in touch with right now. Please know that that is a priority. We need to keep our students and our families close, use our resources to do all we can to support them during this most challenging time. The other piece to this is our continuity of instruction. I think it's worth noting that when we first started out, we had numbers in the 300s of our daily meetings. Now we're well above 300 per day, in the middle between 500 and 600 of number of meetings per day. That speaks to the level of commitment that our staff has made to pivot, to become acclimated to this new environment. Really appreciate the amount of time that they are putting forth to hone their craft to support students. You'll see that the number of active classrooms, again, it's skyrocketed to over 900, close to 1,000 active classes that are being administered online as of today. So again, there's been a trajectory of growth in that area. It's definitely an area that we need to continue to build upon, which I'll be talking about in a little bit. Before I talk about transitioning back to school, I do want to take a moment and recognize our seniors. I know that there's many end of the year activities that they're missing out on. And this is not how we would have anticipated you closing out the school, your school years in our Fairport schools. Mr. Clark has met with students. He's done a thought exchange. He's interacting with a group of students, administrators, and staff and parents alike to develop a plan. He's communicated that there's 3 different options that we hope that we get to experience, getting our students in places where we can interact with them, where they could see each other, where they could celebrate with each other. That's one option, but there's also other hybrids out there. Again, this is all based upon the guidance that we will receive. We have to follow our guidelines from our Monroe County Department of Health, and CDC guidelines will be a part of how we are able to bring students back to celebrate their final days in Fairport. But our thoughts go out to them and to all of our students who are finishing the year differently. We'll be providing a calendar of events, so you can go in one place and see where end of the year activities are occurring and the dates and times, and from locker cleanouts to picking up yearbooks and handing in materials, and of course computers. Another point, there were close to 1,000 computers that were handed out. I know Mr. Forsgren mentioned the amount of work that they've been doing, again, servicing our families, making sure our students had the right technology. So again, a lot of moving parts to this. But transitioning back to school, I'm going to spend a couple moments talking a little bit about our eventual return. And when I speak, these 4 ideas come to my mind. We need to make sure that we transition through the eyes of a child. We need to make sure that people understand that our process is in place. Though there's great uncertainty and there's many unknowns, I want to share with you some details of our process so there's confidence from an understanding of what we're trying to accomplish when we talk about eventual return back to school. Our staff needs to feel this, our community needs to feel this, so when we do develop a plan back, that they get a sense that there's a process behind it. We understand that there's many variables. We need to make sure that we're processing information with facts and research and best practices. And we'll be using multiple different resources and experts to help us navigate through this very different time. I like to call this slide, it's based upon what I call the 5 pillars or the 5 fundamentals of our transition back to school. So no matter what we talk about, no matter if we're talking about bringing students back using a bus or the cafeteria or in the hallways or in the classroom, these are the 5 guidelines or fundamentals that will support our process back to school. We will use recommendations and guidance from our local area experts, Monroe County Department of Health, New York State Department of Health, the CDC. I know many people have seen those guidelines. We'll be using all those different factors to inform our process. We will continually seek feedback and communicate what's occurring. We'll continue doing Facebook Live sessions, thought exchanges, trying to share what we know to the extent of what we know in a timely fashion. The third piece is to understand all the different scenarios so we could apply the guidance and the best practices to these very 3 important variables, the social emotional needs of our students and staff. We have a wide range of networks. We have over 30 professional staff who's dedicated to wellness and mental health. Staff has been engaging with community networks to learn about what's happening and what they should be thinking about as we eventually return. So that's our number 1 priority. We know that the social and emotional needs need to be addressed. The hierarchy of needs are alive and well. Before we can get to learning and meaningful experiences, the most basic needs need to be met. We have a team who is working just on that facet and will be an integral part of our transition. The academic needs, the curriculum management, and the ed programming component of our transition is fundamental. What do we do with students when they return? How do we know where they are academically? What needs to happen with curriculum management? Do we need to adjust our curriculum maps? What type of program do we need to have in place to support students who need remediation beyond the classroom? What type of booster sessions need to be in place? How do we continually measure and monitor progress as we bring students back over the next several months? And of course, there's operations and logistics to everything that we're talking about. We didn't even know what PPE was in January. We're going to be well versed in making sure that our facilities and district operations support healthy, safe environments. And we're equipped or preparing to be equipped with the range of PPE and other logistical components to support an effective eventual return. And then we need to operationalize our plan with consistency, right? Throughout our entire organization, one thing won't happen in one school and another thing happen in another school. There needs to be a consistent application, particularly at the grade levels. And then, as we always do, we will monitor and adjust. So these 5 fundamental ideas will be a part of any conversation with any of these domains, whether it's buildings and grounds and how do you clean and sanitize a school in the world of a pandemic. What are new staff protocols? What do we need to do with our health and safety teams to be a part of this process? Parents are an integral component, trying to get their feedback. Curriculum and instruction team has a set of expectations, and it's all goes back to this slide. These 5 questions, or 5 fundamentals, will be a part of these multiple domains. I truly believe that our community networks need to continue to be developed, especially when it comes to childcare. We need to understand how we could support families. This will be an ongoing conversation because to get our students back in school, we need to make sure that we have all the right resources in place to support families.
Hey, Brett.
Yes.
Hey, Brett, so I'm assuming, because we have talked, but I'm assuming that these plans, when you talk about transitioning, so we transition from, school to home, and now we're talking about transitioning back from home to school, but we also need to have agile plans, right, so that we can fluidly move students to school or back to home, depending on the conditions of the health environment and based on the metrics that we're getting back from Monroe County and the state. I would assume that's being factored in as well. Is that correct?
So there's multiple different scenarios to consider. It's really hard to plan for all 7 of them. We are very interested in continually advocating that we get guidance sooner than later. The sooner we could start preparing, the more fluid we could begin to plan and operationalize the best thoughts and the best practices. Yes, we need to make sure that we are completely ready to start school online in September. We can always back out of that, but staff will be, between now and the end of the year, will be working on plans to develop their capacity, to use the Google Suite. We need to develop a process behind all the norms and expectations and tools and resources for online learning. We could start that right now. There's lots of questions around teaching online as well. How do we build capacity and what professional development needs to take place right now through the summer? So if we do come and we can only come back online, or maybe it's a hybrid, how do we do that differently? How do we build upon what we started? As an organization, we do have time to coordinate our professional development around an online framework. Grading and reporting needs to continually be developed as well. These are ideas that we could start on right now. We'll be highlighting very specifically to the organization as a whole what this looks like in the coming weeks and months. Again, summertime, professional development days. We have coaches in place to support staff to build Google Classrooms. Still looking to buy more computers. The whole world's buying more computers at this time. So again, these are the variables that we're trying to consider. But back to your question, though, if you take a look at number 4, right? Life is good. We're coming back fully in the fall. We are completely operational, right? And then you have number 5. Maybe it's a hybrid. Maybe it's an online mix. But we won't know that until we get the very specific guidance. And Governor Cuomo, within the next couple weeks, the way I understand it, will be sharing his thoughts and expectations for the fall. We'll be working with our Monroe County Department of Health experts and our New York State Department of Health experts to inform our plan of all these different scenarios. Again, it's easier to plan for 1 or 2, not 7, right? We do know that students and staff will have special circumstances. We need to make sure that we follow the guidance from SED and from the governor to support what's best for students and staff who have special circumstances. But all these ideas, when they come to fruition, we're supposedly going to have a process that needs to come to conclusion in July to submit our plan to the state. Right? We will have a transition oversight team, and it's more of a think tank. It's not a decision-making body. It's a think tank asking the right questions to ensure a safe and healthy transition. If you take a look at the participation, it's multifaceted. There's many different groups represented. Again, to ask the right questions, to make sure that proper guidance is being followed, that we're thinking of the right questions as we develop our plans, from our PTA to our village and town to student representatives to county and state representatives, our medical director, and so on. This group will be the place where I will be sharing, of course, with the board as well, what we're going to be looking at when we come back to a potential transition, eventual transition. So in a nutshell, what's on your mind? I'm asking the board right now, are there some initial questions that you're thinking about relative to what I just framed, or this will be an ongoing conversation, and this is what I've been talking to our staff members about over the past week, meeting with them individually.
Brett, when do we have to really focus in on a deadline as to, okay, this is how we're going to come back in September? I mean, do we need to have this by the 1st of August so that we can really start planning? Do we need to, because I know there's a lot of unknown. The biggest unknown is what the governor is going to propose, as well as maybe SED. But I'm just making sure that we're going to have enough time so that when we make that decision 1 through 7, what is going to come back, how we're going to come back, that our teachers, our families, our students, everyone has the ample time to make sure that they're prepared for. And we all know that no matter which one of these occurs, there's going to be a learning curve, there's going to be some bumps, there are going to be some glitches, and I know we're planning for all of those scenarios. But do we have any inkling of we have to have a hard decision by date?
I'm hopeful, and when I'm saying, it can't come soon enough, right? We're being told that that it will be coming within the 1st or 2nd week of June. We should get some insights as to what August and September should look like. Anyone who's created a master schedule out there, or who needs to transport 5,600 students, or feed those same students, or clean those same buildings, there's lots of logistical and operational components to it. So the sooner we get that guidance, and again, the guidance is coming from the governor, because if there's a hybrid, right, there needs to be some dispensation with the number of school days or the seat time allocation. There needs to be some coordinating with our child care centers from around the county. So lots of organization needs to occur. The sooner we get that, the better. I'm just as unsure as the next person, because we're waiting on the governor, and that's something that we've advocated.
Watching the news, some Europeans countries are starting to go back. And it's interesting to see how they have barriers to kids' desks for eating lunch, and the kids are all masked, and they learn social distancing by putting their arms out and making sure they can't touch their neighbor. And it's very interesting to see, and I'm hoping that we will utilize as much as we can of what's already occurring throughout the world so that we don't have to reinvent the wheel. And I know that you are speaking with other superintendents throughout the county so that we're sharing ideas.
100%, and I'm going back to this slide that speaks to, that's guidance and that's recommended best practices and what's applicable. And
Hey, Brett?
yes.
Yeah, so you know, in the decisions to reopen New York, the state segmented New York into 10 different regions, right? They had 7 different gating criteria that they were looking at for when each district was, or each geography or segment of New York State was able to enter into phase 1, phase 2, and so forth. So in terms of school, going back to school, do you think that the guidance from the state will be one size fits all for the entire state, or do you think they'll give guidance based on, like, the Finger Lakes district that we're part of, Western New York, Southern Tier? What do you think it's going to be? One size fits all, or by segment?
This is a I think opinion statement. I think it will be
Yep.
relative to what's happening in the region. And that's why we're very close as a Monroe County group, and that's why we're connected with the State Department of Health. We're connected to Monroe County Department of Health, and they will help us apply what's happening in our region to create the right circumstances and right options that we need to consider moving forward. And the COVID-19 is here, right? It's not going away unless there's a vaccine, unless we have a solid antibody testing program. We need to understand what are the new norms and what are the new procedures moving forward. And
So, Brett, oh, sorry.
no, please.
Oh, I was just going to ask, I read somewhere that we have to submit to the governor a plan somewhere in July. What, by a certain date, what comprises that plan? Because it seems to me that request for a plan came out before lots of the information we need to be able to formulate one.
Yeah, we don't even know what the what is, but you see these 5 fundamentals? Again, this is, we would plug these ideas or concepts into a plan. And the governor has, had us submit plans and then 2 or 3 weeks later resubmit them based upon a modification, right? So I think those right now are aspirational. I would love to be able to say that we will submit to the state by July, because that's telling me that we found out in early June to work on any one of these scenarios that need to be developed. And I can't have my team right now do every single one of these. And we are thinking about ideas, and there's different groups of people within this domain here that are looking at, what's the best way to sanitize? What's the best way to manage barriers or transport students or feed students? Master scheduling becomes complicated. That's why we need to understand from the governor and SED, hey, you can come back, which is great news, but it's going to be at 50 or 60% capacity based upon social distancing and masking, etc.
Right. So, and that kind of feeds into what other technology elements might we need in order to make that kind of phased approach to coming back to school. If we can only have 50% at school at any given time, and the other 50% participating remotely and then rotating, how do we keep clusters of kids together so that we can do contact tracing effectively? And then, do we have the ability to live stream classes while they're being taught live to some kids? Can other kids watch those classes at home and fully participate, or as much as possible, participate in the classroom environment, from a different location? So, I know those are all questions that you're thinking about, Brett, but I just think it's immensely complicated, and I'm looking forward to seeing the plans come, because it's going to be interesting to see what you're able to develop.
And to go along with that from a transportation standpoint, we need to look at, and I know we've had discussion about, do we extend further the radius from each school as to how far children live that are required to walk? You know, so, and we've got so many of those issues that we need to address as well.
That might be part of
Mm-hmm.
the scenarios that need to come into play. Again, when you're transporting students, buses are not meant for social distancing. It's quite the opposite. And we're working with CDC guidelines that are really restrictive, if you will. So it's a Powell 13 all over again, and trying to understand what the guidance is, understand what the best practice is, what's the facts and the science behind it, and then applying it to any one of these scenarios or a hybrid thereof.
Yeah, so Brett, and I know that you're, and I hate to, I'm not trying to throw ideas because I know that you're knee deep in this all the time, or neck deep really, but, you know, in terms of reopening the economy or having people go back to work or go back to the office, a lot of that depends on how kids go back to school. Obviously, both parents can't go back to work if they have small children at home, right? Because they can't be at school on any given day. So there's some sense of coordination between schools in Monroe County and the business environment within Monroe County to make sure that one knows what the expectations are of the other. You know, because I think that, you know, families are on the front lines of this, and they've got to support their kids and support their kids' school. And obviously, if they can't be in school, they can't go back to work.
And the governor has stated that numerous times. He said they're not interdependent. They are dependent upon each other. Both of those groups that you're talking about, Damon. And he says, you know, you can't go back to school without dealing with the business, and you can't do the business without the schools. They have to play together.
So childcare.
That's what he has said previously, but just the other day, in one of his things, he was saying, if we can send kids back to school in the fall. So now sounds as though he's getting a little more realistic of going back to school isn't going to be a simple thing, and we don't know where the health of any one area is going to be. But what I was curious about is, you know, you mentioned using best practice. Since that's research-based, there's so many pieces of this for which there has been no research. This is so new. I mean, certainly sanitizing and those things, there's science behind all that, how to do that. But the distancing, the masks, the socialization without a smile, without touching, without being near each other, there's really no research on this. So it seems as though best practices are something not yet developed.
I don't know that there is, and he's opened up on trying to make quiet. I have quite a bit of anxiety. I'll share some of it, but I'm not sure that's entirely true. Joyce, one of the things is I have a niece who works at the Mayo Clinic, the Center for Vaccine Research, and they've been working on a SARS and a MERS vaccine. And one of the co-directors has offered to meet with us. We're thinking maybe this workshop, if you all are open to that, to ask some of the questions about exactly what you're talking about, right? So things that are known, and trying to blend what's been known really with some of what we're calling guidance, which is one of my anxieties. We keep using the word guidance liberally. I think they're dictates, which makes me highly uncomfortable because some of these dictates are coming from people who aren't considering education. They're considering one focus, which I love, but that means they're a part of the equation. They don't get to make the whole equation, and I think we are caving in. And one of my examples would be if we caved to exactly what some groups are saying, there would be no more play ever, right? Because that, among certain groups, and I can't imagine that we should roll over and simply allow that to occur after we've fought so hard in this district to encourage what is best for education of children, especially younger children, activity and play, and allowing that to happen. And socialization is very much part of our society. I mean, society, that's where, you know, has part of the word in it. So how do we take pieces of information? But that's where my anxiety exists, is that we simply seem to be giving all the weight, 100%, to a group who has a single focus themselves, but their single focus is not education. And indeed, it's an important focus, but it's not a sole focus. And for us, our sole focus is education, so we need to educate ourselves in some other variables, but then blending them together, because I think there's some things out there that are simply unreasonable. And as a society, we're going to have to come to terms with where is that reasonableness. We've done that with other things. We've let teenagers get licenses, and yet that's one of their biggest threats to their life is driving, right? And it's much bigger than COVID-19. So we came to terms with that as a society. I think we have to learn how to come to terms with some of these other things without really devastating how people learn and interact.
We talk about equity. There's only one way we can guarantee equity, and that's by getting students into our buildings, right? Making sure that they have access to a comprehensive, compulsory education, free and appropriate one. There's lots of things that we do not control once students are outside of our four walls, if you will. I think that routine and normalizing in those social interactions, that is school, right? I mean, that's where we do need to find that balance. And I don't think anybody who I'm talking with would disagree with anything that you're saying. So that's why, there's what's transferable, what's applicable, and what's theoretical. And I agree with you, and I'm looking forward to finding wherever that is, in the world that we're living in, because we are in the middle of a pandemic, saying all that, right? And we do know that, the science behind that and the potential for a second wave, we need to be responsive and responsible to it, but you're right, in a way that helps us do what we do, right?
Things have to change. I'm not saying that. I just fear that we were going to abdicate essentially all decision-making to even the governor. If he dictates, we might have to simply roll over, but I'd rather it be guidance that we can take into consideration. Damon, you mentioned the state's been split up in the 10 groups. In my opinion, that's not enough, because even within Monroe County, I want to split up by 21 school districts, right?
Yeah.
We're all different.
Right,
I want to take into account the differences. So one size fits all, one size for that one area is not good enough, in my opinion.
We've seen that also in the news where one state is opening up and everyone from this bordering state goes over to the other state. They say, oh, good, their restaurants are open. We're going 5, 15, 20 miles away to go out to dinner because they can do it, so we're going to do it. I think the next 3 weeks are going to be very telling. Once more of our economy opens up and people are moving more and people are going out more and people are socializing. We've had a couple situations in the village with large groups. It'd be interesting to see in 2 weeks how many of the people in that large group, if anybody, was affected. We don't know. And again, that's part of what this virus is. We don't really know. At first, contact, touching, was a main transmission area. But now they're saying it's not as great a transmission area as they first thought, but it is a transmission way. But it's still, there's so many unknowns, and I think, Brett, you meet almost on a weekly basis with Dr. Mendoza and your group of superintendents, and I think that's the one person that I would put the majority of our faith into right now, because I think he understands Monroe County. He understands what we have here. He talks to our two major hospital organizations. He understands what's going on. He's in touch with the sheriff, with the city police chief. So I think that's as you said, Pete. Let's look at our own home first.
The thing about Fairport is our size, right? I mean, that's why, as much as we're trying to work under the same umbrella, Fairport's blessing is that we're one of, the most passionate communities, largest high schools in Monroe County. But one of the challenges that brings is that we are one of the largest school communities. Social distancing and all those parameters might look differently from one school district to another just because of the sheer size. The science behind it, though, I was talking to a medical professional saying that the percentages are really low for a child to get this and have effects that would be detrimental. That doesn't mean
I was listening to a radio program yesterday, and one thing that we are hearing, Brett, I'm sure you are as well, with a college student child, and Judy, I'm sure you are, and Marty with grandkids. I mean, and I have, what I'm hearing is that a lot of schools in New York are now talking about going back to school a week earlier in the summer, and then ending on-campus activities at the Thanksgiving break and not going back after Thanksgiving, to minimize people going home and then going back after and during the flu season, right? Making sure that we're all, everybody's vaccinated from the flu as much as possible. And then one of the discussions around that was, and to your point, Brett, it's not really about the students. Even in college students, they're not the at-risk population, but the staff is, right? The professors or the teachers or the people in the restaurants and cafeterias. Right. Yeah. So that's kind of a consideration from that perspective. And then the last thing they talked about, and we've all been hearing about the reopening of NHL, NBA, and so forth. And I was talking about the NFL, and they're like, we can't just start the season without having a lengthy practice season. And I was thinking about Fairport sports in the fall. We just can't start the football season in September without having that 6 weeks of practice or whatever, because you've got to train your body and your muscles to be able to perform at that level competitively, and just throwing kids out there without preparing them puts them physically at risk of injury. And so I think that, we have to think with foresight and make sure we have enough ramping time to get those kids, whatever they're going to do in the fall, we have to prepare them physically to be able to handle a game time environment before we put them out there.
Yeah, I mean, and those are all the considerations, right? Those are all the pieces, the athletic, the extracurricular, the drama clubs that we have come so accustomed to, all need to be processed and looked at, and then the right formula needs to be created to make it work in our schools. And it's going to take some time. And like Tim Sliz just said, the next 3 weeks will be very telling. And then from that, we'll be able to put all these scenarios out there and come up with the right plan for our students and our community.
I think one of the best tools that we have that I know the county has started is contact tracing. That's going to be a very telling tool. I know on my village website we get a daily COVID update, and we answer questions and yes, no. And that's one way that the county is starting to collect information from elected officials just to get an idea of is this virus spreading again? How is it spreading? Where is it spreading? What pockets are there? And that's very helpful.
When that happens in our community, there'll be a protocol for us to follow that is based upon the guidance and the recommendations to keep everybody safe and to make sure that it's contained and the spread doesn't get out of hand. So then all of a sudden you have a cell. That's what they're trying to mitigate. So lots of questions, but lots of ideas and thoughts about moving forward. Internally, we're starting to organize ourselves so we can be ready for it's going to be this. So let's plan for.
Brett, in your conversations with your superintendent peers, are they also basically operating under those same 7 possible scenarios?
Yep, everybody's operating from the same. We're waiting to hear and to get specifics so we know exactly what and how to plan. The bigger the district, the more uncomfortable we are.
And Peter, I appreciate your comments, Pete, that I think we have to be cautious about just rolling over on our back and putting our feet in the air and saying, okay, I think we need to really just, again, if they're directives, if they're mandates, different, but if they're suggestions, then that's where we as a group need to figure out what suggestions to how do we listen to those suggestions and how do we implement suggestions?
Well, we have community members who have expectations and thoughts around this conversation as well. So, all that will be information that you're going to have to understand and balance, the right decision for our community too. So, we have the tools to do that.
We have a lot of tools. We know we're gonna have students themselves with compromised immune systems. We know we'll have students who are not, but they will associate with those who do, right? I mean, there's definitely ways, but I think a better plan forward is to try and, I hate the word target, but I can't think of anything else at this time, but make sure we understand those who are vulnerable in ways without impacting, if we can, those who aren't vulnerable and aren't associating at home with those who may not be vulnerable.
It's gonna be a hybrid.
It's gonna be a hybrid,
I think,
right?
that's the best projection. The hybrid of what, to what extent, that's the big question mark, right?
I fear, my anxiety is it's gonna be one size fits all for the whole district because somebody dictates it's all out there and it doesn't matter anymore.
I don't feel that way. I feel,
hope not. That's
just
my
based
anxiety.
upon what I'm hearing and how close to this conversation that I am, we're really trying to understand what's happening in Monroe County and then apply it to our school district. And, but it does take an overall statement an overarching statement from the governor, from SED, to continue on with the guidance, and then we need to apply it. And that's why the plans, as Judy was saying, need to be due in July, so they could start seeing how we are responding to our unique circumstances.
So not forcing anybody to speak, but Marty, Kevin, we haven't heard anything out of you necessarily, anything on your mind you want to share, or?
I think that you covered most of the things that I've been hearing about and wondering about, heard from quite a few people in the community, their question about whether Fairport would follow suit with at least the east side of Monroe County versus go on its own, that sort of thing. Mostly those are people worried about how they're going to balance their work and their children's attendance at school or school at home.
It's a real concern. Yeah, I mean, our children, again, need the routine. They need the normalizing, of interacting with their peers. Parents need to go to work too, right? I mean, these are real things that we need to consider, and I think we need to create a plan that allows all this to happen. And I'm hopeful by bringing multiple different groups from our community into this conversation. I was just talking to a child care center today, again, to begin developing what-if scenarios. And, it will be different, but it will be, I think, accustomed to what's important to us.
I mean, just there alone, daycare centers are operating at 50% capacity. So suddenly they see a spike of children who need daycare that they don't have the ability.
But that there's, talk about grants for families who need to go to work, right? So they could pay for childcare. So that's why it's.
But it's not necessarily the pay; it's the actual physical space.
Well, but it's about.
So it's both. It's a lot, right?
Affording it that's a
it's all there.
So that's why, from the governor's office, stimulus that could be directed, or grant dollars that could be directed to support that would be a burden taken away from our families.
There's where the Gates Foundation could help.
That'd be a great.
I'm just wondering if maybe industry as well as the educational institutions will be more flexible in the future regarding education and regarding work. Because we've had discussions at my work, not at my work, but remotely at my work, regarding whether or not people can remain at home instead of returning to work. There are many admin positions where being on site is not really necessary. So, hopefully that'll allow some parents at least to be able to stay home with their kids if necessary. And maybe it'll be a significant amount of the population. I kind of doubt it because most labor is not just administrative. But flexibility, that's what I hope comes out of this whole tragic circumstance.
Yeah, I think you're going to see a lot of businesses are more flexible to people working from home, Kevin. And quite honestly, if you take a drive down Route 96, past all those office buildings, they've all got vacancies and for lease signs in front of them. And I think that there's a lot of businesses that are just sent their people home, and they've realized over the last 3 months that, hey, you know what? We're getting things done. Things still happen, and I think that that's going to be a lasting trend. I don't think that we're going to. I think that people will go back to work, and they'll go back to work in phases as well. But I think that there'll be a lot of people that are just working out of their house from now on, because real estate's a big cost for business, right? Paying for the office space, and if you don't really need it, then I think they're gonna probably give that up.
We'll be plugging these ideas and more into the process that I outlined. I'm grateful for the thoughts, and I look forward to discussing more of this so we can eventually return to school, get our students back into our schools so we can give them the very best experiences that they have always been accustomed to and the community expects.
A quick aside that might have blended in with Brett's presentation if we didn't, have a very robust and enjoyable discussion. Damon, you had said a comment along, was that from Facebook about questions on eligibility for voting for especially those students who may have gone off to college and registered to vote in that area? I think, do we have that eligibility posted at our website where people can find out? Because without getting into the details, I think the answer out there for anybody who may be listening is you do not have to be registered. You only need to be eligible to vote in a school district budget vote. So they don't have to re-register or lose their registration, but they do need to be eligible, and they do need to certify that they're eligible under pain of a misdemeanor type thing, right? So, but the details
Okay.
are on our
All right.
website.
I believe the details are also on the absentee ballot form.
Okay, great.
I believe from the, if we're using the absentee ballot form that is provided by the League of Women Voters, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, so I believe all, well, let me rephrase that, because they normally, well, yes, because we do send out absentee for school district votes as well, so I'm sure it would be listed on that.
Yeah, and they have to sign it saying they're eligible, so that would make sense that
Thank you.
is required. So anyway, just want to take care of that. Hey, we've had a really sexy, very robust discussion, but it gets even better. We're going to go on to the treasure and investment update report, right? Will you pass the microphone to Mr. Stevens?
Okay, good evening. Tonight we have the treasurer and investment update for the month end of March 2020. We had a beginning general fund cash balance of $67.8 million. Total receipts for the month of $16.7 million. Disbursements of $9.5 million for an ending cash balance in the general fund of $75 million. Of that $75 million, approximately $41.4 million is invested in a combination of T-bills, CDs, and insured cash sweep account. It's about 55%. You'll notice during the month of March, we did have a large state aid payment. Overall, you can see it's about $15.5 million. That money did come towards the end of March. It's really the last day in March of that money received. So you'll see monies then turn over for investment again in April as a whole. So that is the report for March 2020. Correct. Yep, that was before any look back. That would be our regular state aid payment that would flow to the district in March each year. Great, thank you.
I think it is worth noting that if, as Brett and Matt have said, all spending is frozen, and it identifies that in all of those particular accounts on this form.
Yes, and again, we've talked about end of the year fund balance and using reserves to offset future costs. And from our previous conversation about all the unexpected costs that are out there that we are be responsive to.
Very good. Then for the consent calendar, item 3 on the agenda, we have A through E, including bid recommendations and minutes of different meetings. So a motion to approve the consent calendar?
Moved, Tim.
Tim, first.
Second, Joyce.
Joyce, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any Any opposed? Hearing none, we'll say that 7-0. I know some of you are muted, but you're looking for the here, right? So please make sure you speak up if there's a not approval. Personnel actions, item A, the instructional action items, a motion to approve the attached instructional action items.
So moved, Tim.
Marty. Second, Marty.
Okay, thank you, Tim, and second, Marty. Any questions at this area? We do have our famous assistant superintendent for HR, Doug Gloff here, if you have any questions.
One thing that I'd like to make a comment on, I do appreciate working through the details, doing live interviews online. You know, the virtual world is really affecting all parts of our organization, and having teachers who are being recommended here, going through mini lessons, interacting with students, doing it virtually, having them in the middle of a interview, you know, fall off because their internet isn't working. All those things are happening, and you know, without a hitch, the HR team has really moved it along, as well as our administrators. You know, they're continuing to put the process forward. So thank you.
My heart goes out. I was asked to teach an hour-long course, you know, about 25, 30 people. I generally enjoy that experience, but through Zoom, when you can't see anybody, you're not getting that constant feedback. It was, wow, I was sweating more than I'd ever had in a long time. I mean, I had before, but it was just incredible. My heart went out to all our staff for the same kind of reason, where you're not getting that, you know, in-person feedback from students and how challenging that is.
Well, you know, I think that goes back to what Joyce was saying about how personal education needs to be.
Yeah.
And we could talk about online platforms, and I do feel that there's hybrid models out there that we're going to have to move towards. I think that's what we've learned, but there's nothing more important than those interactions that occur, and the socialization and that smile, that kind gesture, you know, the fist bump or toe tap, whatever you're calling it these days.
Oh, whatever it is, all the things that we've learned to observe in people and how they behave. So anyway, sorry, got distracted. We've had the motion, right? And any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. What's the word? Any opposed? Hearing none, 7-0. Non-instructional civil service, motion to approve.
Judy?
Move, Tim.
Judy, second. Tim, will you be
Tim.
second?
Yes.
Okay, any questions in this area? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, hearing none, 7-0. Moving on to tenure. Motion to approve the attached to tenure appointments. I'll make the motion. I need a second.
Damon, second.
Damon, second. Very good. Any questions, comments here?
Yeah, congratulations. And
Always that comment, right? Congratulations, always. We
Yep.
love doing this.
So, yeah.
And we'll have some type of any events come back in September. Who knows what it will look like, but we'll have something for these folks as we've done in the past.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, we're going to be celebrating them in August. At our September board meeting, we'll bring them in and do a celebration of welcoming them to the school year, along with our new entrances as well, but also recognizing this very important moment. But if, Mr. Loft, do you want to take a moment to,
Yeah, just
who's on that list?
really briefly, there's 13 outstanding educators on that list, 8 teachers and 5 administrators. So they certainly have shown their commitment to our students and this community, and we're really proud to recommend them for tenure and look forward to working with them for years to come.
And I would like to just list them off. Administrators, Patrick Groh, Kevin Henschen, Fritz Killian, Meredith Kloos, and Humanities Director Ellen Reed. Of course, Mrs. Kloos is the principal at Brooks Hill. Mr. Killian is our athletic director. Mr. Henschen is the director of staff development, and Mr. Groh is the principal of JP. Congratulations to the following teachers who will be recognized pending this the approval of the board is Christina Cardona Berger, library media specialist at Dudley, Megan Gang, school psychologist, Caitlin Grenario, E&L teacher, At Brooks Hill, Carrie Lenhard, special education teacher. At JP right now, Patrick Marr, special education teacher at FHS. Holly Tata, business teacher. Glenn Wallace, science teacher at FHS. And Danielle Zatowski, art teacher at Minerva DeLand. Congratulations to those who are being recommended this evening.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I need to abstain because of a relative.
One abstention, so 6-0 with one abstention. Thank you, Marty.
Mhm.
And finally, in personnel actions, we have a memorandum of agreement. This is relative to the spring coaching, changes that were made to stipends due to the cancellation of the season. Need a motion to approve the memorandum.
Moved. Tim?
Tim? Second?
Judy?
Judy, second. Thank you. Any questions? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, 7-0. Okay, our board discussion action items, we will get a motion and then ask Mr. Stevens to step in a little bit as to why we're doing this. 5A, revenue anticipation note resolution. We motion to approve the resolution.
Moved. Tim?
Second.
Joyce,
So, Mr. Stevens, would you like to talk to me about this? We haven't done it in this district for a while.
We have not.
I've never seen a RAN. I've seen a band, but not a RAN.
Yep, so, a RAN is a revenue anticipation note. So if you take a look at the resolution, essentially, it's a resolution that authorizes the district to borrow money in anticipation of the receipt of state aid. So with the uncertainty of next year, not knowing what mid-year cuts could look like, may or may not look like, this simply gives the district the authorization to move forward should there be an instance that the district anticipates not to receive such revenue.
Okay.
Getting the resolution in place is the first piece. Then there still is the process of actually having to go out. If a RAN's over $1 million, it could be anywhere close to 6 weeks' time before money can actually be received. If it's an under $1 million borrowing, in about the 4-week range. But essentially, it's a resolution that's good for 10 years that gives the district the authorization to borrow funds in anticipation of receiving revenue at a future date. The district at this time isn't looking to go out for a RAN, but it helps prepare us should the state do any mid-year cuts or delays in aid payments. It's good for 10 years, so the resolution is actually good till May of 2030. So it states that right in the resolution at the bottom.
At the bottom?
Yep, section 3 of the.
Oh, yes, thank you. Thank you. Section 3.
Just in terms of I service municipality school districts across the state, seeing a lot of this happening again as not because they're wanting to do it or needing to do it, there's not necessarily a need yet, but it is get it in place, therefore you've already overcome this, we don't have to call a special meeting quickly to start the process. I've seen them a lot, by the way. Long Island was famous for their TANs, actually, right? Tax anticipation notes and getting them through the summer, low cash periods before all the property taxes would come in September and October. So they would borrow short term and then pay it off when the taxes came in. We've been in good enough position, we've never had to do that. Hopefully we stay that way, but I do see a lot of these resolutions being passed across the state right now.
Hey, Peter or Matt, is there any further board authorization required to actually borrow funds?
No, this is the authorization to borrow funds, but then there is a process anytime the district does, would go through a RAN process of developing an official statement, having the board president sign any borrowing documents that exist, and these are short-term borrowings, so these are just notes similar to a.
Okay, so.
Yep, go ahead.
Well, I was just concerned that there would be some level of board oversight as this process goes on. I mean, not that I don't have full faith in your position, Matt, but I think being able to borrow money without having any type of board acknowledgement or validation probably wouldn't be a good thing for anybody.
Now, typically what we do is, if there was a need to borrow, we'd all see a shortage in state aid payment or a reduction in that. As Mr. Forster mentioned, there's been tax anticipation notes that districts can enter into. They typically do a cash flow process for that. For a revenue anticipation note, it would typically be a specific instance where the district would know we're going to be shorted aid or delayed aid, and then we'd be communicating as a whole body before a borrowing would take place.
So we also have our Audit and Finance Committee, where we would run that specific action through that body, which would then be shared with the rest of the board. So that's one of the reasons why we have the Audit and Finance Committee, would be just to make that process transparent. I think you're right, that oversight is important, and we would definitely follow those chains.
But should that oversight be stated in the resolution?
It delegates the president of the Board of Ed the power to authorize the issuance, so the president of the.
Right, but, okay, so as long as it's, I see that. And this does not have a minimum or maximum limit attached to it, correct?
No, however, if the district's gonna be shorted $5 million, let's say in aid, we wouldn't go borrow 10. It'd be the 5 million. So it's restricted, in a sense, to what the district would anticipate not receiving or receiving at a later date.
And there are laws that govern that type of thing so that you're not purposely borrowing too much. The day and age was actually in the 70s and 80s where governments could borrow at tax-free rates and turn around and invest, and they were borrowing lots of money and investing at much higher rates than they were borrowing. So laws came through to mitigate that unnecessary borrowing, and part of it is to show that you have a real need, or at least potential need, that you can prove through, as he's mentioned, whether cash flow. So we will hear about, I think the time that we'll be asking questions, especially the Audit Finance Committee, will be at those look-back periods especially, right? Okay, what does this mean for us? The Budget Office has put out this plan. There, again, the process allows a 10-day for the legislature to put out their own plan instead, to supersede it, which again, my opinion is they won't. But regardless, we'll have that 10-day window, and then we'll know for sure what's going to happen there. We can ask questions and say, what is the impact on our cash? Do we have our cash? We have some pretty healthy reserves still. We'll see how that after 3 years, if that's the case, right? Knock on wood. But regardless, we may not need a borrowing this year. Maybe it happens the next year when he looks back and cuts. We don't know. But
the word is, in my mind, keeps coming up, is proactive. Just making sure that we have the right pieces in place if we need to make important decisions in a timely way that keeps our organization solvent and operational. So, thank you.
So, hey, Brett. But again, before we take a final vote on it, I did see a movie on HBO recently about the Long Island financial problems that were happening there, and there was literally tens of millions of dollars of money that was extorted. And I'm not at all implying that would happen here, and I even reluctant to bring it up, but I just think that without real clarity and having a board of individuals take a look at this and be involved in an approval decision making, I just think that, I don't know, I feel a little bit leery about that. Maybe it's just a movie I just watched, but I just think that I think that we're all better off having a process that we talk about this and we vote on it as a board, and not necessarily just having a board president approval, because in that case, the board president was not necessarily providing the oversight that they needed to do.
So the board has, we have an Audit and Finance group that meets monthly and or as needed. This would be vetted through that body, which I think there's 3 members on, and then reported to the group as a whole, just like we do in any other process that speaks to our fiscal readiness.
But in hearing Damon's concern, I'm glad you said that. But because this is good for 10 years, and the 7 people who are on the board right now may not be here, nor maybe the superintendent or the assistant superintendent for finance, 10 years is a long period of time. And I understand that the finance committee will look at this, but nowhere in here does it say that. And it needs to be in writing. Here is what we are approving, so that I can, and Damon, thank you for bringing up those concerns. To really, it's got to be black and white, 100%.
Yeah, because this gives 10 years to whomever the president of the board is, and that may change multiple times through the next 10 years. So I share Damon's concern. None of that is written in here. It's great that it will go through the Audit and Finance Committee, but it doesn't say that here, so.
And it also says including renewals delegated to the president of the Board of Education and the chief fiscal officer. So this could be renewed by just 2 people.
Can we easily change one the term to 3 years, for example, to say we think the crisis will last 3 years?
This is actually a recommended resolution by bond counsel, so I would say I'd want to review with bond counsel, if that's a question regarding this. You know, again.
Is there some way we could table this until we get further instruction?
It sounds like that's what the board is requesting, and by all means, we'll develop it at our end and bring it through, through another process, and continually communicate where we are and what changes, recommended changes, if there are any.
And can I ask one more question? Without this, how long, without the pre-approval, how long is this process?
It takes 6 weeks with the resolution in place to get money, so depending upon how quickly anybody could do a special board meeting to get a resolution approved.
Sometimes, like, say, if we meet tonight and then 3 days later, we don't, and our next meeting is, 30 days from now or 15 days from now, it's just a timely way to again, be proactive, have the right systems in place to make decisions.
And Judy, perhaps we're being overly proactive, meaning I don't think we're rushed at this point.
Yeah, we're not rushed
If we table
right
it
now.
for a month even, we're in good shape still, right? So we're, nothing that says we have to rush quickly to do this.
Okay.
I don't mean to put words in your all's mouth,
I
right?
agree.
You who live and breathe it, I want Matt to be able to fall asleep tonight, but,
Yeah.
right, if it's.
Well, the detail is, going back to bond counsel, trying to look at the concerns that are out there and trying to then adapt it. So it gives us the win-win that needs to make the board feel comfortable and us being able to do what we need to do to make the district ready to, manage its fiscal resources.
Just to add, I mean, doing a revenue anticipation note, all similar parties are involved as to doing a bond anticipation note. So bond counsel is going to be involved, our fiscal advisors are going to be involved, lending agencies are going to want to know all the facts about the district, and so forth. So it's not something that somebody can just go out and go to a bank and borrow as a whole. So I just want place that piece of information for you.
Yeah, I just think at the end of the day, Matt, the board is tasked with fiscal oversight and responsibility, and we just need to make sure that we have at least a subcommittee of the board involved in the decision to borrow money. That's all I'm looking for.
And it needs to be stated in the resolution.
Yeah, I think that's where we'll work with bond counsel to see if we can, again, meet the board's needs and interests and being able to, again, use our financial resources to support the district as a whole. So I think there's a win-win there.
Great. All right, thanks.
I think technically then, and this is just the Robert's Rules of Order that being technical, right? We need a motion to table this. And it sounds like we have.
Well, we've got a first and a second already on here, so we need to vote it down, correct?
I think the motion to table it supersedes that then, in terms of order of how it happens now.
Okay. So I will make that motion based on the discussion that we have, that we table this until we get more information and clarity from bond counsel.
Right.
I second it, Joyce.
Second, Joyce. Unless there's another motion that supersedes that, or in terms of order of precedence, right? Hearing none, we can take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, then 7-0, we will table this for time being.
Thank you.
Yep, that was kind of cool because we haven't tabled something in my tenure before in terms of 8 years on the board. So sorry for new experiences.
And it's a good thing you're there because I see the table.
Otherwise, we wouldn't have one. Okay, approval of the first read of policies. So we have 2 policies there listed. Approval to, or motion to approve the first reading. Come on, where's our
Judy?
committee? Judy first, second.
Yep.
Who was that? Yep. I guess
I'll second it, Joyce.
Second, Joyce. Questions about these policies at all, anyone? No, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, 7-0. Then we have second reading, 3 policies or 4 policies listed there. So a motion to approve the second reading.
Actually, Pete, those are 2 policies and 2 resolutions. Or 2,
Regulations.
regulations,
Yes,
right.
2
not
policies,
resolutions.
2 policies, 2 regulations. Motion to approve those.
Move, Tim.
I'll second it, so second by Peter. And any questions or comments?
Yeah, why are we approving regulation?
Yeah, we don't need to. It's basically there for you to read, I think.
The policy is what the board creates, and the regulation corresponds to it. So you're right, we don't need to approve a regulation because it's all based upon the policy.
Right.
So we just have those, I don't know, we need a motion, just have those
Yeah, just-
removed. We are,
it's just
the
the
motion
policy.
is voting for the 2 policies, second.
Right, we're just
policies.
voting for the 2 policies.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none then, 7-0. And then acceptance of donations, all of these are donations to our food service program. A motion to accept or approve the donations.
So moved, Marty.
Damon?
Marty, thank you. Second of Damon. And before we
Yep.
thank you to the generosity of all these individuals, FEA, Maria Caroni and Gabrielle Rode, Suzanne Hilt, Agostino Cocha, and then Living Waters Christian Fellowship, all of them for making donations to our food service program, supporting, what'd you say, over 40,000 meals now having been served? And
This is in addition to that, yes.
right,
Correct.
okay,
Yep.
so. But
Brett, are we still averaging still about 450 meals a day usually?
Anywhere between 4 and 450, depending on the day.
Wow.
Sometimes you'll get beyond 450 and 5, in between 450 and 5.
Great.
So,
That's great.
yeah.
So all in favor to accept or approve the acceptance?
Aye.
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 Oh, we got a thumbs up, I see that on the screen. Any opposed? Hearing none, seeing none, 7-0. And then we have an intermunicipal agreement with Pittsford Central School District to use our fueling station. A motion to approve this intermunicipal cooperation agreement.
I will make that motion, Tim.
Tim, thank you. Second,
Marty.
Marty, thank you. Any questions about this?
I do have a question. I see the dates at the top are April 30th through June 30th, but in the document, they are different. In the document, they are March 1st to October 31st. And I'm guessing that we are going by the dates that are in the document, not at the heading.
Correct, it's the date in the it's actually the date, correct, in the documents, not in the heading.
March 1st, 2020 to October 31st, 2020.
Yes, yep, I apologize.
Okay.
They actually have some construction taking place at their fuel facility, and they reached out to see if they could utilize our facility with fuel app, which we were glad to help out. And then they just are invoiced throughout the process as well.
And I know in the document, it does refer to the dates that are in the document, but I just wanted to clarify those 2 discrepancies.
Yep, and I can work with Pittsford just to revise the top to be sure it all matches.
Okay.
Nice catch, Tim. Other questions, comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No, hearing none, 7-0. And that,
Hey, Peter, I propose that we do all future voting using emojis and reactions in the application.
but I'm only seeing 3 people on the screen, right? I can't see the others, so it's.
Right, you got
Okay. Yeah.
But I love it. I love the thumbs up, so.
Damon, when we go back to in person, you're gonna have all these little placards with sticks for your emojis.
Yeah.
Unless you can put them in your glasses somehow.
Okay, we're counting that as your comment in the comment section. You're out of luck now.
Okay, yeah, I'm done.
No, well, it is time for board comments. I believe we do not have any executive session tonight, no needs, nothing has changed. So any comments from anybody? Now's your time.
I would just like to make a couple observations or express a couple observations. Since the good weather is here, I've been seeing a lot more kids out on their bikes, and fishing is a new hobby for a lot of kids. And in speaking with a lot of these kids, as they're on the road and I'm in my driveway, I say, so how is it? They said, I just want to go back to school. They said this is really hard because it's so hard you can't just raise your hand and ask a question, and I can hear the frustration in their voices. But I'm also glad that they're getting out in small groups and they're wearing their masks and they're out doing some things. So it's good, and I'm glad that we're letting them play basketball in the park, and they're doing a good job with that. And it's good to see that kids are able to be kids again in some capacity.
And I would just like to say that I think so frequently of the comment that I think was attributed to Mr. Rogers, where he talked about his mother's advice to look for the helpers whenever there is a catastrophic event. And so often, as I look at our social media and I hear stories about people's experience, we just have so many helpers. I saw today something about robotics, that they had made all kinds of masks to distribute or to donate down at Strong's. And, things that I hear about the teachers and the ways that they are reaching out to the students and really checking in about how people are doing. And all of the people donating to the food service, I just hear so much of that coming out of Fairport around now.
And actually, the food that was donated to the food shelf on the 2 days that the masks were given out, which were just huge lines, they were just totally amazed at how much food and money was coming into our local parent and food shelf. And I'm sure, like a day like today, what a great day to distance learn, because those schools would have been brutal.
Yes.
They would have been brutal today.
Yeah, I've had the opportunity to kind of, and I'm sure many of us have had an opportunity to see some of the commencement speeches that are given now online by people in different venues. And I will say that just how special this class of 2020 really is, and it's a once in a lifetime. I mean, we've never seen this before. These kids are all part of a class that's going to be known for a long time of having to be resilient and flexible and positive and empathetic. And, I know that it's difficult to miss so many things that were expected, in your senior year of high school. But, my admiration for this class and these kids, it really goes out to them. And I just know that the strength that they're building through this process, they're going to carry with them in the future, and that they'll be resilient and flexible and be able to, roll with the punches, if you will, because they've lived through a pandemic, and they're going to be able to survive in a changing environment. And I'm proud of them. I really am. And my heart goes out to them, but at the same time, I'm really excited for them and proud of them.
Yeah. Well said. Thank you. Anyone else? Then I will make a motion that we adjourn our meeting. It's 8:18. Do I have a second?
Second, Marty.
Judy?
Second.
Second, Marty. And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 7-0. Thank you, everybody. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.